We often talk about tropes, cliches, and archetypes as if they are bad and something to be avoided at all costs. And admittedly, I'm guilty of doing this on my channel. But the truth is that many stories actually rely on conventional techniques and storytelling strategies, and actually use them quite effectively. Whether you're consuming a novel or a film, many stories are going to include some familiar conventional elements. And these tropes are successful because they speak to some element of the human condition or psyche that makes them resonate with readers time and time again, even though we've come to recognize them. So today I want to talk through some of the story tropes that are actually timeless and still used widely today, and continue to be effective with audiences. I'm going to explain why I think they work so well, and also give you an example of a recently published novel that uses this story trope successfully. I always recommend reading contemporary books that are being published if you are hoping to be published one day, because it really helps you get a sense for the market and reader appetites. So you can also use this as a mini book recommendation list. It also always helps you strengthen your craft to read other writers' works. If you are currently working on a book, I recommend subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Every week, I either post tips on how to strengthen your manuscript like this, or I talk about the book publishing industry, especially from my background in the traditional publishing side. So I'd love to have you around for all that. I also have a free resource for my YouTube viewers. The link is in the description below. It is a self-assessment that is going to help you identify the strengths and weaknesses in your current story and help you set a roadmap for how to take it to the next level. The best part is it's going to sign you up for my exclusive newsletter, where I provide insights that you will not currently see on my channel. So don't miss out on that. So let's dive into the first timeless story trope that continues to work, and that is a contained setting. This means any story that primarily takes place in a particular enclosed setting. This could be a college campus, an isolated island, or even a single room. The reason I think this trope continues to work is because it immediately gives the story a sense of focus. And if the setting is well portrayed, it can give a cinematic and immersive type of experience for the reader. In a suspense novel specifically, a contained setting can give this eerie, claustrophobic type feeling that amplifies the tension and puts the reader on edge and just enhances the sense of ominousness. I always associate Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None as a perfect example of a contained setting. And more recently, The Guest List by Lucy Foley did this really, really well. That is a thriller that takes place on an isolated island off the coast of Ireland, where all of the characters have been brought to celebrate a wedding. And of course, bad things happen. An extreme example of a contained setting would be the novel Room by Emma Donoghue. This is a story where a boy and his mother are being held captive in a room. So that is exactly where the story takes place, within four walls. That is an extreme example of a contained setting, but I hope those give you an idea of how this can look in literature and why it works so well. The next story trope that continues to work well and be popular is a will they, won't they narrative. This is the classic romance setup where it's unclear if the couple is going to end up together or if they are going to break up. It takes us on a roller coaster ride of their relationship from the ups and the downs. The reason this works is that it immediately gives you a sense of narrative tension, and therefore gives the reader something to be reading for. We want to see whether they end up together or not. And we want to understand how the friction between the couple ultimately plays out, and if it blows up or if it resolves. It's a really good way of hooking the reader in the story through to the end. And it also speaks to our own human desire to form and nurture relationships and our craving for a happy ending. We ultimately want that sense of resolution and to see the characters end up in a good situation. A recent example of a will they, won't they would be The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which was also made into a film. This story in particular also incorporates another trope that I don't get into in this video, which is a enemies to lovers story, where two people who hate each other eventually become lovers. That can go in tandem with the will they, won't they trope as well. The next timeless story trope is an outsider looking in. This relates to any character. It's typically a protagonist who is entering a new environment, and we have to watch them navigate it. It's someplace they've never been before, someplace that maybe makes them a little bit uncomfortable even. This could be someone who's entering a new school as the new girl for the first time, or someone moving to a new country country and they're a foreigner, or someone even spending time in a wealthier social circle or a poorer social circle. The reason why this trope continues to work so well is because it speaks to the human experience of feeling like you just don't belong and haven't found your people. It can also convey that excitement of peeking into a new world that maybe you've admired from afar. This trope also immediately gives you a strong character development arc because we're watching the character learn new things, gain new perspectives, meet new people, having meaningful experiences. All of this automatically makes the narrative and the character more engaging. A recent example of an outsider looking in would be in the novel Verity by Colleen Hoover. The premise of this story is that a struggling writer ends up working and living in the home of a very famous best-selling novelist. And she's able to peek into the world, even inhabit the world of this person that she has so admired for so long. The next timeless story trope is an unreliable narrator. Now, you may roll your eyes on this one, but hear me out. I get it. You might think that this is a tired and overused trope, especially because it has gained popularity with Gone Girl and now become almost a staple of psychological suspense, especially. But in my view, this trope actually does continue to work if executed well. If you disagree though, feel free to leave me a comment and we can hash it out there. The reason I think the unreliable narrator continues to work, even though it is pretty prominent in the psychological thriller and domestic suspense space, is because it sets the reader up for a truly shocking twist if it is executed well. Because as readers, our default is to trust the narrator, right? So it really destabilizes us when we can't. And then we become intrigued to want to figure out who the narrator truly is, why they have been lying to us, what's actually going on with them, what other secrets they're keeping. I think it also speaks to our human fear of someone that we're close to, aka the narrator, turning out to not be who we thought they were. No one wants to be tricked, and so it does give us this tension with the narrator. A recent example of this is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Now, I'm not going to go into how the trope works in this story specifically because that would be giving away the twist, so go and read it for yourself. The final story trope that continues to work is reckoning with the past. These stories feature a protagonist who is trying to deal with something that is haunting them from their past. This could be a trauma, or this could be a family secret that they are learning more about as an adult. They're trying to get answers to something that feels like a loose thread in their past, something that's always itched in the back of their mind. I think this works because everyone's past informs who they are today, and pretty much everyone has something from the past that they've had to work through and deal with, something that they probably continue to even reckon with today. These types of stories often deal with questions of identity as well as familial relationships, which are some of the richest topics to explore in fiction, because they are just so complex and touch on so many human emotions. A recent example would be The Marsh King's Daughter by Karen Dion. In this story, the protagonist's father was a survivalist and kept the protagonist and her mother captive. We see the protagonist 2 decades later when her father has escaped from prison and now she has to go find him. So she really has to deal with all of those unresolved tensions from the trauma of her childhood. I hope this video helped you consider the tropes that maybe you use in your own story and recognize some of the qualities that make them effective. And I hope it helped you realize that cliches and tropes are not necessarily bad to use in your story. You just have to use them correctly. Let me know in the comments if you do have any of these tropes in your own book. I'd love to hear it. And if you are looking for the flip side of this video where I talk about tropes to avoid, check out my video on cliche plot tropes. That goes through some ineffective tropes that are a bit overused and gives you ideas on how to freshen them up and use them in a new, unique way. If you liked this video and found it helpful, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget your free story self-assessment waiting for you in the description below. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.